right, sounds good. All right, well, you guys have a wonderful set of projects moving forward. It's really fun to hear about those. They all sound really interesting. Just so I know, it sounds like most of you are kind of working on kind of your initial pilot projects. Has anybody started writing a career development award yet? I know that Lindsay, you said you were going for a R level award. Just so I can get a sense as to where everybody is.
Yeah, I've written one, and I'm working towards resubmission with additional pilot data.
Great.
I have not done any of the above. Very much a novice. So.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, I'll go ahead and get started. So as it's outlined here, this is going to be a talk about career development awards, which are largely synonymous with K awards. But career development is kind of a bigger umbrella than just K awards, even though K awards make up more than 75% of career development awards that people will get kind of in the early stages. So I'll talk about K awards specifically, but mention some other opportunities for career development awards that may be outside of the scope of that. And just so you guys know, I have put a lot of information on the slides for you because this tends to be a lecture where people like to go back and kind of look at the slides for specific items and time points and things like that. So I'm not going to touch on all of the information on each slide. And rather than create an additional guide for you guys to go through, you can use these slides. I'll make them available to Charlene afterwards. But just know that they are kind of packed chock full. If you want to stop and talk about anything, please feel free to interrupt. This is really informal. And then we should have a little bit of time at the end to kind of dive into any questions. Just so you know my background, I'm an associate professor at the University of Colorado in pediatrics. I am part of our research training fellowship for this style of kind of early career development research. This is a lecture that I give in various formats to fellows and kind of young junior faculty on campus. So hopefully it'll kind of hit the mark with you guys. We'll go ahead and get going. Just to disclose, I don't have any conflicts of interest or disclosures. And then kind of the objectives for this lecture are to understand the purpose of a career development award and the different options that may be available to you. Think about how you can become competitive for career development awards, and then to understand big major components of a strong career development application. So, like I said, a career development award, typically synonymous with a K. What are they? And this is pulled directly from NIH's website, almost verbatim. Really, the objective of a career development award is to support your development as a clinically trained professional who has committed themselves to a future career in research, particularly patient-oriented or clinical research. And you need some additional training to be able to develop into a productive and successful clinical investigator. Typically, this is done through mentored research career experience that has some type of kind of a didactic training plan alongside of mentored research experience. The mentored research experience is kind of typically the part that many people focus on, but as I'm going to show you a little bit later, you have to focus equally as much on your didactic kind of training plan, as well as selling yourself as the candidate. A K award typically will provide you guys salary and research support over a sustained period of time that people will often refer to as protected time. And then the expectation is that you're ready at the end of that period of time to apply for the next level of grant funding. Oftentimes that's like Lindsay's going for the R level funding from NIH. So why should you guys consider a career development award? And there's a number of reasons here, but I'll highlight a couple of the big ones. One is that you're focusing your career on research moving forward. You anticipate research being 75, 50% or more of your time for the foreseeable future. But in order to be successful, you still have skills that you need to gain, which is that term career development. Those are the skills that you need. I'll leave the rest of these for you guys to read later, but those are kind of the two main reasons to go after a career development award. Reasons why not to consider a career development award are equally important to think about. If you can't commit to any of the things that were listed on that previous page, stop. Maybe this is not the right pathway forward. If you have a career that is going to be largely clinical and kind of balanced with other research interests, other academic teaching responsibilities, where research may be a piece of your career, but maybe only 25 or 40% of your career, a career development award probably also is not the right pathway for you. And then I'll focus on this last one because a lot of people think that it's an expectation of their division head or their department chair. And that is absolutely not a reason to do it alone. You really need to have an interest and a passion for research. As you guys are figuring out, research is a labor of love. It is slow. It takes time. So if you're not fully committed and engaged because you want to be there, a career development award is just going to be a painful process. So potential benefits of a career development award or a K award are that you typically get salary and time protection for somewhere between 3 or 5 years, depending on the type of award and the funder. And really, this protected time is to give you guys the ability to really focus on your research, to focus on grant writing, and to achieve that extra set of skills, those extra training items that will allow you to push your research forward, publish, work on your projects, get pilot data, so that you can move towards that next step of independence where you may not have a mentor helping you kind of push your projects forward. It also gives you a really nice opportunity to build this local and national network of collaborators. I will say through the course of my K Award, which I finished about a year ago, over the 5 years of that K Award, probably one of the most valuable experiences was that I got plugged into these groups of research networks and research collaborators that people shared kind of interests. They helped you kind of move your projects forward and vice versa. And it's turned into a really robust network of collaborators that I built during my K Award that I'm now collaborating with moving forward on our level projects. So I can't stress how valuable kind of that part of the career development is. The types of career development awards that are out there for you guys, like I said, the ones that you're probably most familiar with are the Federal Series K Awards. They provide 3 to 5 years of support, and these slides will have links to the K kiosk and some of the actual K descriptions so that you can see exactly what institute may overlap and align with the types of projects or interests that you're pursuing. There are institutional K awards. I'll talk about these in a few slides, but these are typically shorter and smaller, and you compete within your institution for one of these awards rather than kind of externally at a national level. Foundations oftentimes make similar style awards available. These are typically more on the order of 3 years. As compared to NIH and AHRQ, they tend to have fewer restrictions and requirements on how you can use the money and kind of what you need to get done. But the goals are still the same, that they want you to develop kind of skills to move towards independence and kind of move towards our level grants. And then there are some options through PCORI as well that I've listed here. People don't know as much about the PCOR K08 awards, but they are a good mechanism to explore, especially for some of the work that you guys are doing. So the K Award itself is a federal grant from typically either NIH or the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, AHRQ. They are termed a mentored research career development award, and the mentored piece is absolutely imperative, and we'll get into that a little bit later on kind of how to sell that piece. Typically, you're going to hear a lot of acronyms, but for K awards, they are usually a K23, which is patient-centered clinical research, or in AHRQ lingo, it's a K08. They're almost identical, and the instructions are the same. Again, you'll need to figure out what kind of institute or center is doing research or funding research that aligns with your style or type of research, because you will have a higher likelihood of convincing them to fund your projects and fund you if those overlap. Then in terms of what's typically included in a K award, the hospital gets paid 75% of your salary, and it buys out 75% of your time from clinical, administrative, and any other responsibilities. So it essentially commits the hospital to protecting you for 75%, where no matter what, you have that 75% to focus on your research for those 3 to 5 years. Most career development awards or K awards will have attached project funds as well. So you get somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 typically, in addition to your salary support, that goes into kind of a research fund that you can use to pay for classes or pay for a research assistant, go to meetings, reimburse families for participating in studies, things like that. And then it also pays hospital facilities and administrative fees. Just so you guys know, this is, you may not be familiar with these yet, but these are kind of like the hospital tax on anything that happens at the hospital. So these are kind of big awards, and they really, again, carve out a big portion of your time to be protected. Not surprisingly, they're competitive, and they've become more competitive. So this is a slide with 3 columns of the number of K awards by institute that have been funded in 16, 18, and 20. And I don't have the data from 2022 yet. But you can see that overall, the numbers, when you look at the 2016 column to the 2020 column, have largely shrunk. And kind of that varies based on the institute. I've highlighted in bold here a couple of the institutes that tend to fund projects that overlap with children with special health care needs, children with medical complexity, just so you guys can take a look at that later. But the main point of this slide is they're competitive, so you got to put your best shot forward. The institutional Ks that I mentioned earlier, typically they're termed K12 or KL2. They are awarded to an institution by NIH, and then if your institution figures out how to essentially distribute those awards internally to people who are ready to use them. The candidates typically will apply locally, so you'll apply to your university or your hospital versus applying directly to NIH. And these typically serve as like a runway to an external K awards, such that they provide the same kind of support level of funding typically, but with the expectation that within 1 to 3 years, typically 1 to 2 years, you are writing kind of a version or expanded version of your institutional K to submit to an external NIH institute or AHRQ to transition away from that. Because of that, these typically kind of are like a rotating door where people will kind of get funded externally, come off, and then all of a sudden a spot or two will open up for somebody new at the institution. So these tend to be a really nice mechanism to explore, and I would encourage you guys to see whether your institution has these available. And then I've listed here, I'm not going to go through these, but here are a number of other types of foundations that fund career development awards that may overlap with the projects that you guys presented at the beginning. Worth taking a look at. These are often a little bit less competitive to apply for, but they have just as much funding and salary support attached. So in terms of thinking about being ready to apply for a career development awards, you guys are all at different stages of training. Couple of hopefully points of wisdom. So what does a successful career development award application require? The most important thing is proof of why the funder should invest their time and money in you. And kind of you, I stress here, you're going to see this over the next few bullet points, that specifically you need to provide them proof that you have kind of a career development plan and a training plan that make you qualified and ready with these additional skills that you will accrue during a K award to be ready for independent research. It's providing proof that you have a research project and have developed a research plan that's going to teach you how to do really rigorous, high quality research, but also emphasize the training goals and the training gaps that you outlined. And it's going to put you at the forefront of your field. And then importantly, proof that your mentors, your co-mentors, and other people that you may collaborate with during the course of your K award are invested in you, that they are excited by your research, they're committed to making you kind of capable and able to move into that realm of independent research. And then finally, less important for a lot of you because you're at these great research institutions already, is that you have the environment to be able to do your project well so that you can get it done. In terms of when to apply for a career development award, most people who are successful have been working with their team, and that means the mentors, people that you've collaborated with, other co-investigators, for a year to a year and a half prior to putting in a K award. It's really nice to be able to demonstrate that you have a good working relationship with your set of mentors and your set of collaborators. And typically, this is demonstrated through publications that you may have put forth. Those may be things like opinion or perspective pieces even, which are a great way to start getting your foot in the door for publications with mentors, or you may have pilot work that you've already published with them, but some type of evidence that you have a good collaborative working relationship. You are going to need an area of research focus. All of you have that, so that's great. That's an easy check box. And ideally, again, you'd like some proof or evidence that you have committed to that area of research focus. So publications, other pilot grant applications, things like that are all good evidence. You will need a defined training plan, and I'll talk a little bit about this later. And then, like I said, a commitment from your institution. Key dates and timelines. I'm only going to go through the first bullet here, and you guys can read the rest. But for NIH and AHRQ, there are 3 cycles each year that happen in February, June, and October. And then the resubmissions happen the month after those 3 cycles, so March, July, and November. You can look at the NIH K kiosk has all of the key deadlines, dates, things like that in the application materials, and that again is in the link that I showed you earlier, and that you'll have available to you after this. Then I would plan on writing your K award for 4 months, probably more like 6 months, thinking that you're going to be putting in 50% of your time to writing that K award. So it's not a small endeavor, but to be successful, you need to give yourself at least 4 months to really draft, go over your initial drafts and ideas with your mentorship team, and then you're going to be hammering on those aims and kind of the supporting research documentation approach, et cetera, multiple times. And then you can kind of move forward with the submission process. So I alluded to how to prepare for a CDA. because it's going to take 4 to 6 months of writing, I really think it's a good idea to start thinking a year before kind of the deadline that you're going to be ready. So right about now, we're in January. Like, I would say people who are thinking about maybe applying for the February cycle a year from now, like, you should be starting to get yourself going and kind of familiarized with the documents and starting to assemble what you need. The first key is making sure that your institution will support you in this. This shouldn't be a problem for most of you because research is typically highly valued at big universities and hospital systems. You're going to start entering into discussions about what your K set of projects and training goals might be with your potential mentors, and start kind of loosely thinking about what are the set of research ideas that I'm really going to start honing in on specifically to craft your specific aims. And then most importantly, I think, is what are those career development needs? Because you've really got to prove that you need skills, that there's a gap that you can only achieve by working on this specific set of research projects and by doing these specific set of training activities. These are all very interrelated items, so they tend to happen kind of in conjunction with one another. It's not like you can just do 1, 2, 3 and go down the list. And because of this, it takes some time for these things to gel. At the same time, you should be looking at the K kiosk for the funding announcements and looking actually at what's been funded recently. NIH maintains something called the NIH Reporter, which is a great online database of all funded NIH and AHRQ grants. And you can get on NIH Reporter and look to see, based on keywords or investigator names or topics, what's been funded and whether K awards have been funded by certain institutes that overlap with where you want to go. That's a great way to judge, I think NICHD, the National Institute for Child Health and Human Development, has funded these types of projects, and hey, that matches with mine perfectly, so I'm going to go to NICHD. It's a great tool. I would encourage you to use it. And then try to get your hands on other funded career development award proposals from people maybe a few years ahead of you at your institution. It's great to read a variety of them because there's no one perfect format, but you'll get a sense once you've read a few successful proposals what works and kind of the things that people routinely highlight and call out to make sure kind of that the reviewers know why that candidate will be successful with this type of award. And then it's oftentimes useful once you've done these other first steps to then go ahead and think about reaching out to the program official at whatever institution you're going to be putting your K award into. So this typically is once you've gotten to the stage where you've got an aims page written. So you've got your one-pager, kind of the background, your specific aims, maybe some information about your training gaps and your training plan. That's a great kind of advertisement to go ahead and send by email to a program official at the funding institution that you might apply to. See if you can get a call set up with them to talk about it and to talk about your project, and you'll get some feedback typically. One, this aligns with what we intend to fund, so apply. And then 2, well, maybe you should frame this aim this way or add kind of this component to this aim. So they'll give you some hints as to what may be useful to make it even more attractive to the funder. So I will pause there before we get into mentorship and just ask to see if anybody has any kind of major questions. Nobody's been interrupting, and I'm totally willing to have you guys interrupt.
This is incredibly minor, but is there any advantage to applying at any point in the cycle throughout the year, or is there an advantage to doing February over later, or
No. It really doesn't matter. There used to be some lore around that the highest number of applicants would go in for the June-July cycle, kind of as people were coming off of residency or fellowship opportunities and moving on. Certainly, it is the highest volume time of the year when you look at the number of applications going in, but I have had feedback from program officers as well as kind of other successful applicants, and I think that is largely lore. Really, if you put in a strong application at any time of the year, it will be reviewed as a strong application and you will have a high chance, and it's not going to be modified by time of the year.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So kind of moving on, mentorship is a huge, important portion of K Awards. Mentorship or mentored is obviously in the title of almost all of the NIH and AHRQ K Awards. And it's oftentimes kind of a required component for the foundation style career development awards as well. So in terms of finding a K mentor, it's not the easiest process often, especially kind of once you get into more niche fields and projects. So the list to start with is typically pretty short, and somebody who fits all of the needs perfectly, that becomes even more of a daunting process. So I have found that it's most helpful to really sit down with your division head, your fellowship director, maybe even your department chair at the hospital, your university, to figure out who kind of may be a great fit for a possible mentor or set of mentors for you. And knowing that person may be somebody you've already identified, and that's great if so, but it may be somebody that you've not identified yet, and it may actually be somebody from outside of your division or your department who really has expertise that aligns with what you need. And you may not be aware that person kind of is doing an analogous project in the adult world or in a different population, but having some early discussions, again, with division heads, fellowship directors will help you kind of investigate that larger network of possible mentors. That said, it's really hard to find one person that fits kind of all of the roles of a mentor. So people have moved over the past several years, let's say the past 3 to 5 years, to using more teams of mentors, where I have seen more often than I used to, maybe 2 primary mentors that are co-mentors whose skills may complement one another. Oftentimes one person who will be a career style mentor and maybe advise on aspects of research that they are experts in. And then the other mentor may be more of a clinical content mentor, or somebody who has expertise in the specific population that you are looking at. And this can work really well as long as you kind of pitch it and sell it well to the review committee. The one caveat that I will say here is that Zoom has enabled a lot of collaborations to happen at a national level. And there are some people who have assembled national mentorship teams. I think that is something that is much more accepted by review committees than in the past. That said, I would really try to find a local mentor as your primary mentor or primary co-mentors, just because it will make it'll make your projects go more smoothly, having people that can help you navigate your local systems and kind of advocate for you within the hospital system or kind of wherever you need to get your research pushed forward. And a couple other quick points. This is a relationship, so it really matters that you have a good relationship with this person, and you should try these relationships out, because it's hard to figure out whether or not the match is perfect just by looking at paper or kind of one-time meeting. So I often encourage fellows and junior faculty to really try to test drive or work with potential mentors, maybe by working on some data that they may have, or writing an opinion piece or a perspective piece together with them, becoming involved in something that they're doing, because it can give you a good sense as to whether this will be a good, growing and beneficial relationship for you, where you've got an advocate that'll be in your corner. And don't discount junior faculty. A lot of times people will say, you got to find somebody who has mentored other K awardees and who is R funded. And that's absolutely true, because there is experience that comes with that is necessary. However, kind of the more senior people get, the more inaccessible they can become. And junior mentors may have a lot more time, a lot more kind of recent experience with methods and things that you're doing or would be valuable to you. So don't discount involving junior mentors as part of your mentorship team or your kind of broader, larger collaborator team. Like I said here, 1 or 2 primary mentors. You should be planning on meeting with your primary mentor every 2 weeks during the award. That's the expectation, and you've got to make sure that your application mentions that your letters from your mentors mention that, all that type of thing. And then you can, like I mentioned, have other mentors with specific areas of expertise who you bring in as your larger collaborator team. Everybody needs to have clear and defined roles on the project, and the review committees pay close attention to this. So being very deliberate in outlining who those mentors are, what they're going to bring to the project, what aspect or aim they're going to be providing expertise on. And again, if you can demonstrate their commitment to you through letters, through projects that you've collaborated on or papers that you've put together, all the better. I'll stop there. These are still high level things because I want to make sure we get through. But anybody have questions on kind of mentorship or the mentorship team, things that you've come up against?
I had a quick question. I mean, it sounds like a big commitment for the mentor as well to partner with you for a period of years and have frequent meetings and all that. Not to like sound rude, but what's the incentive for them? Does it look really good on their resume? I mean, do they get any financial support from the K Award? What would they be getting out of that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So no, they do not get any financial support from the K Award. So as you point out, it is a huge commitment of time and effort. What is beneficial is that it serves as evidence of mentorship for kind of that mentor, and that is important for their own career development and promotion from junior faculty to associate and professor level roles. Mentorship is kind of a key metric that is used to promote on especially for research faculty. So they do get something out of it. It's a little bit less direct, but that is important. Number 2 is that there's value in this to the institution, such that hospitals and universities like to have people with K awards. It is, for lack of a better word, it enhances their reputation. So they want them. And to do so, they are kind of protecting time of their more senior research faculty to help mentor and kind of bring up young faculty to be successful in K awards and kind of transition through the grant cycles, from K awards to R awards to beyond. So, again, indirectly, oftentimes people who are in mentorship roles will have positions at the university that have been carved out for them to have this type of protected time to be a mentor. So yes, it is a big commitment on their part, but yes, they do get kind of the big indirect benefits from being a mentor. And then there's just kind of the great piece of it, which is I think most of us who have moved into the mentor role, like at the end of the day, I love doing it. I love being an educator and a mentor and a teacher. And I think that's why many people agree to mentor. So kind of there's that aspect of it. I love to see people get excited about research, develop a set of projects, and then move it forward and be really engaged and successful. And I think that's ultimately what drives most mentors. And hopefully you will find a mentor who is driven by that, because that tends to be the type of person you want to work with. But great question.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a big ask. And so I wanted to make sure I understood like what was helpful for them out of the things too. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you talk a little bit about, particularly with the evolution, perhaps more towards team mentoring, the difference between, or how you handle primary mentors, secondary mentors, and then kind of advisory mentors, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So yes, people have moved much more towards kind of team-based approaches, and I think that the most important thing is just, again, you've got to be so clear in how you explain it, both for yourself and the team, so that you know what you're doing and kind of what each person kind of will contribute, but more so for the reviewers themselves. And as long as reviewers understand kind of the structure of why a team is important, nobody will have a problem. So what I did for my own, because mine was team-based, and what I've seen a lot of people do, is devote a half a page or a page kind of to the mentorship team and the structure of the mentorship team. I have this primary mentor who is going to do X, Y, and Z. I am going to meet with them at X frequency, and they will resolve any disputes amongst the rest of the team. They're the head of the team along with you. I'm going to have a co-mentor who serves X, Y, and Z roles. I will meet with them every month or so, and kind of we'll meet with the other co-mentor, every 2 months. And the more deliberate you can be at outlining that, so that everybody understands the structure of how that team is going to operate and how it's going to operate successfully, then nobody's going to worry about a team versus a solo mentor. Oftentimes, again, if you can pitch the need for those different team members, it will enhance your application, if anything. The mentor letters are also another good place where you can kind of reiterate and reinforce kind of the specifics, where your mentor should state somewhere in their letter, this is my set of roles, this is what I'm going to do, this is my meeting frequency, and it should be kind of almost duplicating what is in your application. So that's kind of what I would suggest there. Again, the one caveat with teams is that I wouldn't make somebody who's afar, at a different institution, your primary or primary co-mentor. I would make them a content or an expert mentor. But it's harder to sell somebody at a different institution. Why don't we, for the last few minutes, just move into the big specific elements of a career development award application, then we'll finish up and we can finish with any questions. So I'm not going to go through all of these. This is the list of all of the components of a career development award application. And the reason I list them is because it's a lot of things. So this is why you got to start, that 6 months to a year early, because there's a lot of pieces besides just the application materials that you need to assemble, whether that be letters of support from your various mentors. You need additional letters of recommendation from past mentors. These are 3 more letters, and all of these things take time, on the order of minimum a month to 2 months to do. So I would suggest when you get to that year out where you're starting to think about applying, go to the K kiosk, look at the instructions for a career development award so that you know all of these different components that are listed here, and start kind of working on them. The instructions are like most government things. They're like a thick training manual, 300 pages long, but they've answered every question that you could possibly have. So follow the instructions, and it will have kind of key tips and tricks on how to meet those instructions. The one thing that you don't want to happen is that you kind of miss an important instruction, or you do something a little bit kind of out of turn that doesn't fit with how applications are submitted. And that's just an easy way for the review committee to say, who's already busy, they can say, oh, they didn't follow that instruction. You know, we're going to toss this application out of the pile for review. They can kind of come back once they fix this little thing. And it could be like that you didn't format your biosketch correctly. That, you know, that could get the application kicked out after 6 months of you guys assembling that. You know, you got to wait another 4 months before you can submit it again for a simple mistake. So read the instructions early and follow them to the T. The kind of 4 major things that I'll highlight are institutional support. You need commitment from your university or hospital that they are going to agree that if you get this award, or even if you don't get this award, that they are committed to developing you as a researcher. And this usually is in the form of a 1-page letter, and specifies that no matter what, and especially once you get a K award, that 75% of your time will be protected for research. You can't submit anything without this. So this is something, again, to work on early. You'll have a career development plan that you put together. And this is, again, what I term as, you know, those gaps in knowledge or gaps in training that you need to move from where you are currently to being successful with your projects and having the skills you know, to move those projects forward in the future on your own without mentorship. So you really need to be articulate about what it is that you need, what are those training gaps, and then how are you going to fill those gaps? And that is, again, something that you will say, like, I need X skill, and I am going to do it through coursework. And I'm going to take this course at the university. I'm going to do this through a workshop, pre-conference workshop at PAS or another big conference. I am going to attend kind of seminars that are relevant to the skills that I need. And you will come up typically with this table or grid of on the kind of left-hand column, essentially a list of skills, and then kind of a grid for the columns to the right of kind of what training opportunities are going to meet those skills and the timeline for achieving them over your 3 to 5 years. You will have a research project. So again, you'll need to have a training vehicle to be able to practice the skills that you're learning. It's kind of key. It's not everything, but it's key. Should be something you want to do in your field of interest, because you're going to be committing the next 3 to 5 years to it. And 5 years can be a long time to commit to something. So make sure that you're doing the project that you want to do, not that somebody else thinks you should do. It should be linked to the training goals that you kind of outlined. And then it should be feasible. So this is kind of the biggest stumble I think that people make, is they are overly ambitious with kind of the research project for a K award application. You can really avoid this by talking early and often with your mentor and making sure that you've come up with something that you can sell being able to do. It's always better to sell something that's feasible and then outperform and kind of deliver extra analyses or things of interest to the funder, rather than saying, I'm going to do 15 things and then not be able to achieve even half of them. And really, the training project here should be laying the foundation for a larger grant, the R level or kind of a U level grant down the road. And then the last kind of big piece are statements from your mentor and co-mentors. And we went over this already a little bit earlier when we were talking about mentors, but it's really an important part of the application. As we talked about, it needs to demonstrate the mentor's commitment to you and a very clear and articulate plan of how they're going to do that and how they're going to support you over those 5 years. Just for you guys to know, people often ask this question, who should be writing these letters? You guys probably should be writing these letters. It serves two purposes. One, it'll take some burden off of the mentors because these are probably busy people who are mentoring various other people as well, and kind of sitting down and writing a 2 to 3 page mentor letter is a big task. So by drafting it, you can kind of make that process a little bit easier for them. But I think more importantly, you being able to draft the letters from your mentors and your collaborators allows you to really highlight kind of what you want the review committee to know about each of those people and how they're relevant to your application. So, your mentor may not have the ultra vision or the ultra structure that you have in your mind of how this team fits together. So by you writing those letters, you can really kind of create that structure that makes sense and that you'll also emphasize in your application documents. And then to kind of bring it all together, you guys, if you haven't seen these types of figures already, you will once you start diving into people's sample career development award applications. So this is a pretty typical K Award figure that you will see in probably 75% or more of K Award applications, where on the kind of left-hand column, you will highlight your current research and training, where you guys are now, what you're doing now with your pilot work. Kind of the middle set of columns, you can see this person has outlined their research aims for the research project, and then their training aims and goals that map to those research aims. And again, it's not just the research project, it's the training aims and the training goals as well. So you can see this person beautifully kind of matched aim 1, kind of their research project with a set of goals that kind of is based in curriculum, formal research training experiences, and then some mentorship as well from kind of specific mentors and advisors. And then the far right-hand column is kind of the next steps of where you intend to take this. And I don't want to undersell this piece. This is really important as well. As somewhere in the application, you need to make it very clear how kind of this middle part of the application bridges the gap from where you are on the left to where you intend to go as an independent investigator somewhere down the road. So the bottom line is that K Awards, even though you may be focused on like, I got to get this project hammered together, like they're going to really critique the project, or they're going to they're going to focus on this aspect of the application. It's really not as much about that. This is about you and your K application, and what the review committee looks for is that you have built a comprehensive and a compelling story about why a funder and the review committee should invest their time and money in you and in kind of your ideas. So again, make sure your voice is in the K Award. Make sure your excitement comes through about your research and why you are passionate to committing to this for the next 3 to 5 years. And that will, I think, add that extra touch that gets you over the finish line. So with that, I will end. We're right at 11. I can stay around for another 5 minutes and kind of take any questions that you want, but hopefully that was a good overview of the K Award process. I'll leave it there.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. That was fantastic. Like such great practical information. So